Chapter 85 to 88. The remnants of the attack were dealt with swiftly. The only reason they managed this level of destruction and chaos was due to the nature of their attack. I didn't really listen on the details, but apparently one of the elders, who was close to Yasaka, was apparently a spy, or just fed up with her in general and aligned himself with the rabble. The hero faction were taken, and confined to wherever Yasaka keeps her dungeon. Only Siegfried died, several others are in critical condition. They are keeping them alive, mostly for questioning, but alive they are. Unfortunately, I couldn't remove their sacred gears, without killing them, that is. All of them except for Jean, they were more like concepts that wrapped around their souls than actual items like the boosted gear. Less tangible, and I didn't know if they would die or not, and Yasaka seemed to want them alive for some very advanced interrogation. Perhaps I'll get the chance to do something with them later. Jean though, I just couldn't touch her sacred gear due to the holy nature. But I helped seal them tight. George's was surprisingly difficult to keep down. It seemed to want to escape whatever I did at any moment. Well, one of the lot was up and about. And he won't do anything? Yasaka questioned Artoria. He gave me his word he will not forego his punishment, nor will he bring you any harm. Artoria nodded. Yasaka looked at me. I trust her with my life. And her instinct was frighteningly accurate. She seemed to accept that and just turned to the one prisoner who was not bound. You plotted against me and many of my people are dead. Yes. Arthur spoke, not even speaking anything in his defense. The only reason you haven't been thoroughly forced to speak everything you know is your thin relations with Artoria. Yasaka added. Artoria never spoke of her connection with him and by extension the Pendragon family, but the physical similarities between the two of them was rather hard to miss. Not to mention the glowing holy sword that denoted her the true king of England. Why? Yasaka finally asked, seemingly exasperated. To protect my sister. Do you expect me to sympathize with you? Yasaka scoffed. No, I merely gave an answer. Arthur shook his head. Yasaka seemed annoyed with his answer but wanted more information regardless. What happened to your sister? My family would not relinquish her, and I was already doing everything I could to pressure them into not hurting my lover. Arthur explained. She is a genius magician, perhaps only matched by her namesake. Since I left, they had doubled down on their control over here. I don't know how it happened, but Chow Chow made them back off and brought her out from under them. Yasaka huffed, clenching her fists in anger, then letting out a long sigh. You didn't actually harm any of my people, nor did you have a direct hand in my daughter's suffering. I can more or less guess what your relationship is with this Chow Chow. She rubbed her temples. 20 years of servitude. No doubt with your abilities, living past a normal human's lifespan would be a simple matter. I will serve to the best of my abilities. Arthur dropped his head in a bow. A knight does make a vow like this lightly. Artoria said sternly. My word is my bond. He replied. I would offer my sword, but I feel like I would get beaten up if I take it out. You have another weapon? Artoria asked. Yes, I only used Caliban under dire circumstances. He stated. I usually stuck to using Excalibur ruler. Excalibur, ruler. Artoria repeated the words, almost like they were poison in her mouth. Take it out. Arthur just blinked, not seeing any negative looks from Yasaka and nodded, pulling out the sword from wherever he kept it. Artoria snatched it, her expression unreadable, but I could tell her emotions were very turbulent. This is not Excalibur. She sighed, placing her hands on either end and snapping the blade like it was made of wood. Let it rest in peace. She said quietly, placing the pieces back into his hands. Arthur just stared at the pieces his sword had once been. Even Yasaka looked genuinely surprised at what Artoria had just done. You said your family, the Pendragon family, is holding your lover hostage. She spoke up again. Yes. Arthur said quietly. I fell in love with one of the maids working at the family estate. Damn it, I'm not really in the mood to make a joke with that. Perform your duties well and I shall go retrieve her at a later date. Artoria turned around and walked away. Apparently, she needed a moment to herself, not that I could blame her. Well. I broke the small silence. I guess that puts an end to this matter. Yasaka looked, unamused, pacing back and forth for a few more moments. I think she wanted to ask some things, but she refrained for now. It also seems Yasaka still has much to say to this young man who is on the wrong end of her ire. Wilhelm, bring me to see my daughter before I start kicking him out of annoyance. Yasaka finally turned away from the blonde knight. With pleasure. Gathering both Artoria and Yasaka, we entered Zelretch's living room. It was rather spacious all things considered, and there wasn't anything particularly private in the area, so I felt fine bringing a guest here. "Mommy," a shout across the building drew all our attentions. "My little fox." Yasaka swept her daughter up in her arms. Zelretch and Rin followed right after her. "Thank you so much." Yasaka turned her eyes towards the two unfamiliar people. "Think nothing of it." Zelretch gave a gentle smile. "I was more than happy to meet my great-granddaughter," he said with a laugh. "Oh god damn it, whatever. Wilhelm spoke of you briefly, it's good to finally meet you." Yasaka gave a polite bow towards Zelretch. "Oh, here we go. It seems my grandson is still up to no good with the ladies." Zelretch chuckled. "Do I have yet another granddaughter now?" "I'm trying," Yasaka replied. "He just continues to heartlessly reject my confessions." Yasaka dramatically feigned heartache. "Daddy." Kunu slipped out of Yasaka's grasp and collided with me. I couldn't help but wrap my arms around her. "Did you have fun with Gramps?" "Uh-huh, he showed me some toys he made. Ruby was really nice too." "Oh, that could only end well." "Who's Ruby?" Yasaka asked, turning towards Rin. No. Rin denied. "I'm Rin Tosaka. Another of Wilhelm's harem, is it?" "What?" "No." Rin shouted shock. Before turning towards me. "Wait, you have a harem? You didn't know?" Yasaka tilted her head, eyeing me. "You didn't tell her?" I pushed this question off to Artoria. I never found the time to bring it up." She turned slightly red. Zelretch just cackled. "Was Saber not enough for you, you man whore?" Rin pointed at me. "Rin, jealousy isn't a good look on you. Who would be jealous of you?" "Kids." Zelretch stepped forward. "Humph." Rin crossed her arms, clearly overcome with jealousy. "What a fun bunch you are." Yasaka smiled. "I really can't you all enough. Kyoto is always open to you and I would love to host you at some point." She stopped for a moment, taking in her surroundings. "Why does it feel so strange here?" "Never been to Kyoto." Rin mused, seemingly changing the subject with haste. "Actually, I've never been to anywhere in Japan outside of Fuyuki." Isn't that in the Oita prefecture?" She tilted her head. "Yeah, I'm the second over there." Rin beamed. "Second owner?" Yasaka asked in confusion. Rin paused. "It's a mage thing." She waved her hand dismissively. Yasaka didn't dwell on it thankfully. "A trip would be lovely, I'll see if I can squeeze in the time for a future visit." Zelretch lied with practiced ease. How much effort would it take for him to leave this world line like that? I apologize for the suddenness of my visit and now I'm leaving abruptly as well, but with the recent attack on my territory, I have a great many things I need to take care of. Yasaka spoke, clearly indicating that she needed to leave. "My dear, is it completely understandable?" Zelretch quickly eased her discomfort. "I'm sure we'll be seeing much more of each other. I do of course wish for my great-granddaughter to visit as well. He is really enjoying this." Yeah, keep playing it up." I rolled my eyes. "I'll take you both back." Kunu was still grabbing me as I pat her head and Yasaka gave me a smile. Yasaka said her goodbyes I opened a portal for us right back where we left. "You going to be okay?" I looked towards Yasaka briefly, before taking in the damage around the area. "We should be fine now, comparatively." She sighed. "I thought we cleaned up enough last time, and here we are again doing this all over again. At least I'm positive we weeded out all the traitors this time." I thought for a moment before taking out several talismans. "Kunu, sweetie." I knelt down next to her. "Would you do Daddy a favor and keep this on you at all times?" "What do they do?" "They're good luck charms, I made them especially for you." I gave her a smile. "Experimental, but they should trigger upon receiving an attack of sufficient damage." "Okay." She happily took them. Yasaka looked me over and sighed again. "You really are a good man." She gave a small smile, watching her daughter's happy expression. "Before and now, how am I supposed to pay you back if you keep rejecting me?" She gave a light laugh. To say I don't have a soft spot for her would be a lie. We barely know each other. I know I'm being hypocritical for saying that, but it just felt different this time. It makes it even weirder considering I have basically accepted Kunu as my daughter. She just laughed. Maybe I've been going about this wrong then. I like the mischievous side of you, I admitted. But I can rarely tell if you're being sincere or not, and I don't want my heart played with. She paused, her expression changing. I see, is that how you felt? She muttered to herself, seemingly lost in thought before sighing again. Kunu, sweetie, say goodbye to daddy. Come back soon. She wrapped me up tight again. Of course. I hugged her back. Please come back and visit soon. Kunu has grown rather attached. Yasaka rubbed her daughter's head. Though she isn't the only one wanting you to visit more. Perhaps, we can spend some time together later. I offered. I would like that. Yasaka brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, giving a bright smile as I left through a portal. I let out a long breath as I stepped back into Zelretch's workshop. Long day? He asked, gesturing for me to have a seat. Has Artoria told you everything? I sat right next to the mentioned woman. Some things. He replied. But filling in the blanks would be helpful. Yeah, like why was there a phantasmal beast, a nine-tailed fox dropped on top of me? Rin deadpanned. You mean that literally or? Quite literal. Zelretch chuckled. Damn, I'm good. I hate you. Rin drolled. Alright, I got some goodies for you from my trip, I'll give them to you later. Humph, you better. Rin huffed. I looked at Artoria and I couldn't help but put my arm around her shoulder. She gave a small smile as she nudged herself closer to me. So, basically, that was Yasaka, she rules over half the yokai in Japan. I'm on pretty friendly terms with her. Friendly terms? Rin raised an eyebrow. Yeah, I can think of two big reasons for that. Ah, well, her breasts are magnificent, I can't deny that. Anyways. I expertly changed the subject. Long story short, saved her daughter, blah blah, that was the first time Artoria came over, met Izanami, things happened. Next thing I know, they are attacked again and I kind of panicked and sent Kunu here because it was the safest place I knew. That's, actually really adorably. Rin sighed. How come she was calling you, daddy? I may have been adopted by her. I admitted. Well, I approve. Zelretch nodded. She is a wonderful little girl, I look forward to spoiling her. I guess she handled Ruby well too. Rin muttered something about how cute Kunu was and how she was called Auntie. But, thanks for the help and looking after her. I said sincerely. Honestly, I don't think I could handle anything happening to Kunu. You've known her for how long? Rin looked surprised. I know. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. Don't know what happened, just got rather attached so quickly. Am I projecting my own father issues onto this situation? Zelretch shrugged. Why even question it? It doesn't harm anything, and everyone involved is happier for it. That is a good way to look at it. Fuck it, then. She's my daughter, I'm adopting her. How you doing? I turned towards Artoria. I am, still processing what happened. She looked down at her hands. I know it is not the same as our world, but still, some things still weigh on my mind. She waved her hand, bring out Caliban. Is that what I think it is? Rin's eyes widened. Indeed, at least that world's version, it is a very peculiar blade. Yeah, I think the god of the Bible even had a hand in its creation. I added. Zelretch rubbed his chin. Curious, I wouldn't mind taking a look at it later. Speaking of, I also have this, but it's refusing to obey me. I took out Gram and set it on the coffee table. Yasaka didn't even question my intent to take spoils, but the others didn't really grab my attention. I prefer quality over quantity. Oh my, that is a nasty sword. Zelretch admired it. Feels rather demonic. Gram, so it's about what you would expect, just not a noble phantasm. I left the others with Yasaka, none of them really caught my fancy, and Gram is being very combative with me. It's weird seeing a legendary sword like this, and it not being a noble phantasm. Rin hesitantly touched the flat of the blade, a small whiff of demonic power pricked her finger as she gave a small yelp. Stupid sword. She muttered. So, how's your projects going? I asked. Rin gave a so-so gesture. Probably need a couple more weeks to finish up. Damn, a few weeks, I don't want to rush her, but, ugh. I want to see Meridia again, but heading there before without them just feels like it would lead to more issues. I mean, time isn't flowing the same for her, so it's only on my end I'm feeling the time. I guess I can keep putting up with this for a bit longer. That's fine, I guess I can see to some other matters. I turned back to Zelretch. Been feeling a bit restless, figured I would end my little vacation here. And I still have that list you gave me. I was thinking of investigating one of the worlds you left notes on, something there caught my interest. Oh, which one? He asked. Honestly the name escapes me, but you made a note of it having a broken moon? Rias Gremory POV. Mother. I greeted as I entered the house. She gave a warm smile, wrapping me up in a hug. It was nice to see her. Going to the human world for school made it so I would sometimes go days without even visiting mom or dad. Father. I looked towards the man who sold me away. Rias. He replied curtly, not even looking the least upset that I'm still barely speaking to him. Well, I've known about the arranged marriage since I was a child, but recently he's completely stonewalled me from even bringing up any alternatives. I wasn't against marrying someone, but why did it have to be that idiot Riser? He only sees me for either my Gremory name or my body. He couldn't even make a half-assed effort to get to know me before drooling all over my boobs. Even if I didn't want to be here, mostly because of Dad, it was the first time we've all gotten together in weeks, since Takao went missing and everyone started fighting. I walked into the dining room, seeing the maids start setting out dishes and silverware everywhere. Hello, Rias. I turned, recognizing the voice. Brother. I smiled towards Serzex who strolled in with Grafia right behind him. How are you doing, Rias? Serzex smiled, opening his arms for a hug. He wasn't wearing his formal, Satan, clothing. That was a good sign. Good, considering. I embraced him briefly. Grafia. I looked towards my sister-in-law. Hello, Rias. Grafia gave a neutral smile, clearly not in her maid mode. She prioritizes being a queen and maid over being brother's wife. Still though, she never takes off her maid outfit. I was happy to see them, but it just felt so awkward. It was like everyone was forces themselves to keep up appearances. The table was prepared rather quickly, everyone filling in. Where's Millie Cass? Father wanted to spend some time with him. Mother responded politely. Oh, he's with grandfather. Rias, we have some news. Dad broke the new silence. The Phoenix family is pushing to move up the marriage date. What? I stood up slamming my hands on the table. I was told I could wait until I'm done with college. Rias, behave. Mother lightly chided. Listen to everything before you get upset. I took a deep breath, settling back down. Mother was actually on my side, not wanting me to be forced into a marriage I didn't want. As I was saying, the Phoenix family was pushing to move up the date. We were talking about it in a few weeks, but after everything that's happened, he glanced towards brother. It's going to be a few months instead, possibly up to half a year. I was promised until after college. No, you were not. Father sternly replied. You were told we would let you continue through your schooling as long as you kept up with all your responsibilities. I have. I'm gone to every gathering you wanted me to, every party and every stupid political dinner. I threw my hands up. You have. He nodded. But that's not everything, is it? Tell me, how's your peerage doing? How's your training coming along? It's been a year, I believe, since the last time you showed off your power. I'm excited to see how much you've grown. He said dryly. I winced at what he was implying. I train every day. I countered. Rias, doing the same pitiful exercises every day does not count as training. He shook his head. Not to mention your peerage. What's wrong with my peerage? Rias, your peerage is a complete mess. It's a reflection of you as a devil, and in essence, a reflection of our family. To call them dysfunctional would be generous. He sighed. And I hear you added another piece, a pawn. How did that turn out? I made a mistake. I shrunk in my seat. He was supposed to have a sacred gear, but he still has a dragon bloodline. A dragon bloodline is impressive. Father agreed. So what are you doing to bring out his full potential? Training. The same training you subject yourself to every day. He raised an eyebrow. He picked up a napkin, wiping his mouth. Rias, I know you don't agree with this marriage, and I have given you ample time to prepare, to fight for yourself, yet you squandered it playing around in the human world. What? I looked at him in shock. Rias, it's obvious you were planning on using a rating game to decide your fate. He rolled his eyes. Do you think I'm stupid? I didn't interfere because if you could get out of this mess yourself, then I would have no qualms about your future partner. Unfortunately, you seem intent on just wasting all your time away and just whining that life isn't fair, even with all the tools available for you to succeed. What tools? You stopped anyone from helping me. I raised my voice. I stopped your brother from using his political power because it would set a very bad precedent. And we both know he would have helped you without a second thought. We both glanced at Zelretch, who just gave a small smile and nodded. And tools? Rias, I'm tempted to walk over there and smack you upside the head. He deadpanned. You have nearly unlimited resources available to you in the form of money and manpower. You could have hired tutors, bought weapons, hell you could have found peerage members by just broadcasting your name all over the world. He stood up, slamming his hands on the table this time. But you've done nothing. So you don't get to whine about this marriage, you don't get to prance around and pretend like you're some caged bird. You made your bed, it's time to lay in it. He sat back down. You've been given a set allowance for now on. And any requests will be going through me. My eyes widened as I stared at my father. He didn't even lift his head up to look at me, and I turned towards Mother. Mom. Rias, I love you dearly, but you need to understand that actions have consequences. She calmly stated. You have been too complacent for far too long. But, I'm the heir, wouldn't it look bad if I become some kind of trophy wife for Riser of all people? I tried to lean on the family angle. Rias, you will always be taken care of, but you are far from the only one able to shoulder the family. Mother replied. Milikas is just as talented as you when it comes to his power of destruction, who knows how strong he'll be in the future. She explained. Not to mention my other grandson. She shot a look at Zelretch, making him frown. I didn't know what to say, it seems like everything was suddenly falling apart. That reminds me, how is Okita, Zelretch? Mother stared intently at brother. He took a deep breath. He is recovering. Zelretch said evenly. What happened to Uncle Okita? I couldn't help but ask. Recovering? We have a store of phoenix tears for things like this, are they not enough? Okita got in a bit of a scuffle, with your nephew. Mother spoke. I turned towards Zelretch, who just stared down at his place, and Grafia, who looked like she no longer wanted to be here. The news is spreading quite fast, though most people don't know who was able to put Okita into the hospital. Even after a few phoenix tears were used, he's still bedridden. Mother continued. I've only been able to get a few pictures so far, but they show a lot of magic being thrown around. Yes, it's hard to miss a goddess delivering the body of one of our most popular devils onto our front door. Grafia spoke for the first time this evening, and it was only to take a jab at brother. I guess they're still fighting. What happened? I asked quietly. The details are a bit vague, but Okita and your nephew fought over in Kyoto, under the supervision of one of the Yukai leaders. Apparently Izanami no Makoto was there as well and is quite close to our wayward grandson. She did not take too kindly to Okita being aggressive as he was. Japan's death goddess attacked Okita. I couldn't help but ask in shock. No. Mother shook her head. She merely delivered his body to us. He was beaten in a duel by Wilhelm. Who's Wilhelm? I asked. Ah, that is your nephew, apparently he has a new name. Mother explained. Don't worry, this is the first time I am learning of this as well. She shot another glare at brother. What? I shouted in surprise. How did he beat Okita? Okita is like, one of the strongest in the underworld. I mean, he can't compare to brother and Zelretch, but he's still one of the strongest knights even if he isn't at the top. That is quite the mystery, isn't it? How did my grandson beat someone with centuries of experience and power under his belt? Unfortunately, we'll never know because he does not wish to come back. Mother. Zelretch sighed. Are you really going to do this right now? What, do you expect me to stop bringing it up? To ignore the fact that I have a grandson whom I will probably never meet? Mother narrowed her eyes. Is it that he wasn't strong enough for you? That he didn't have any power of destruction? That didn't seem to matter when he promptly handed Okita his ass. She huffed. You told me when you were first sending him away that he would be looked after and lead a normal life, not that he would be shuttled away to a corner in Qrow and forgotten about. Okita held back. Zelretch spat out, ignoring everything else she said. There was no way he would have lost if he was fighting at his best. Oh, then why did he say that Wilhelm held back substantially as well? Mother countered, earning a glare from brother. I did go meet him now, just because I am annoyed at you and by extension, him, doesn't mean I don't care for his well-being. She didn't back down from brother's clearly annoyed expression. According to Okita, he was well versed in magic, and had a mastery of swordplay well beyond what his age and experience should have allowed. Your son defeated your knight in single combat, and it's only a matter of time before everyone knows this. So, what exactly is your plan now? What even was your plan then? Grab him, force him back here where he clearly didn't want to be? I would think of something. He muttered. As long as he's back, then things would be fine. Because everything would fit back into your picturesque idea of a life. Strongest devil, with the strongest queen as his wife, a genius son, sitting high up on his throne. What's missing from that picture? You have everything you could want, but here's this little black spot called Wilhelm, and you see it and can't help but try and hide it. Zelretch stood up, the screeching of his chair silenced the room. He took the napkin in his lap and threw it on the table, walking out of the room. Mother just sighed. That stupid son of mine, just doubles down with his stubbornness. She shook her head. You tried. Father gently pat her shoulder. I'll go try and stop him from doing anything foolish. Grafia sighed, following after him. How? How did Wilhelm get so strong? Okita wasn't the strongest, nor even in the top 20 of the underworld, but he was definitely up there. I've seen him train Kiba a bit, I've watched videos of him fighting, yet, the thought of him losing to someone my age seemed impossible. And now I have to deal with my marriage moving up, what am I going to do? You know, I feel like a divorced dad whose ex got the kids. I propped my head up with my arm, sitting at the table watching Artoria hold both the true Longinus and Graham. Artoria seemed amused by that, flashing me a smile as she lightly swung both weapons. This demonic sword doesn't like me. She gave it a few more swings. Yeah, it wasn't exactly sapient, but it had its own intelligence. It was more like it was putting up with her as opposed to wanting her to wield it. Almost like it could recognize Excalibur and begrudgingly admitted its inferiority and just stayed quiet in her hands. Honestly, it almost completely ignored the fact that she was a dragon, even though the sword vehemently hated dragons. My Ascalon has more powerful anti-dragon properties due to its nature as a noble phantasm, yet holding it did not bring about nearly the same feeling as this Graham did. But the spear won't stop glowing. I pointed out. She furrowed her brow as she stared intently at the spear, setting the sword down next to her. This spear, it is not a noble phantasm, but I feel uneasy with it in my hand. She ran a finger along the flat of the spear tip. It feels like something is watching me intently, judging each of my actions. And other facets remind me of my own lance. Really? It reminds you of that ridiculous thing? I was surprised by her admission. You know of my lance? She tilted her head. I do, I suppose I am one of the few alive that does, Zelretch being an obvious addition. I sat back in my seat. The pillar that fastens the layers of reality to the world. I waved my hand flippantly. Not even my knights knew of its true nature. She said quietly. Merlin warned me very early on not to overuse its power, comparable to my sword it was, but its nature made it incompatible for mortals to wield over time. The spear, do you like it? I shot her a smile. She looked at me with a little surprise on her face. Are you asking me if I was interested in keeping it? If you liked it, I wouldn't mind giving it to you. A smile crept up on her face as she shook her head. No, it's giving me an uneasy feeling. It would not reject me, but I feel like I would lose something precious if it took it as my weapon. She sat it down next to Graham. But, your intent is very much appreciated. She turned her head away, a small red tint on her cheeks. Besides, it is your spoils of battle, I have already taken Caliban, and I feel uneasy about that decision. Worried about your descendant? I asked. It is a strange feeling. She admitted. I know I am not technically related to him, but I somehow feel responsible for his actions, as deplorable they were, yet he did them for a good reason. She took a seat at the table. I am conflicted, what should I do? Well, he seemed to realize he was in the wrong, that means he isn't beyond saving. I pointed out. And you are not angry he had a hand in? She didn't finish, but I knew she was speaking about Kunu. I am furious. I replied, which wasn't a lie. I would not bat an eye if Yasaka dealt with him. But I'm not unreasonable. He didn't directly involve himself, and my heart isn't made of stone. I can recognize the reasoning for working with Chow Chow. I can't say what I would or wouldn't do for my sister, I don't have one, but I don't know what I would do to save someone I care about. I wish to have words with this Pendragon family at some later point. She stated, her expression hardening. I will happily go with you. I offered. It seems like there are several more reasons to go back to the world now. I sighed. I never intended to get attached there. Artoria got up from her seat, walking over to me before pushing herself in my lap. She looked up at me, rather bashfully. Hello. I couldn't help but laugh as I wrapped my arms around her. She leaned back, meeting me eyes. Is this uncomfortable? No, I was just surprised. Someone is getting more confident. She hummed lightly, I could feel her head against my chest. It's true, I also have things there that occupy my thoughts. Is he? I asked. Yes, I admit I do not have many people I can call friends, and I did enjoy my time spent with her. Rin was different, with Izanami it felt like I connected with someone on my own. Artoria said quietly. You know, Zelretch probably wouldn't mind shuffling you back and forth when I'm away. I already told her that I would be heading out soon, and she was there when I spoke a little bit about the world I was going to. It would not be inconvenient for the Wizard Marshal? She looked up at me again. Of course not, he already considered you part of the family, even without us dating. Oh. She looked rather happy at that comment. I see, I suppose I should make preparations then. A small pep in her tone gave away at her excitement. Maybe she's been feeling a bit stifled staying in the clock tower for so long. I felt bad telling Izzy I wouldn't see her for a bit. I sighed. I think it would do her good if someone popped in every now or then. I could tell that Artoria wasn't trying to be overly sexual when she sat on my lap like this, but her shifting her butt over my groin every now and then. Izanami is not the only one either. Artoria spoke. Your bond with Kunu was rather sudden, but it was no less heartwarming to see you so taken with her. I can't help it, she adopted me. I chuckled. And Yasaka? She asked. What about Yasaka? I'm curious on your thoughts of her. She is a good mother, it must be hard to juggle that along with ruling over a large portion of Japan's yokai. I meant as a woman. Oh, really? I have seen the looks you've given her. I was merely curious if there would be another woman in your life or not. I thought about it and I still wasn't quite sure myself. No idea, I doubt I will ever abandon Kunu so something may happen in the future, but I'm not really on the lookout for more women to add to my growing harem. She finished for me, a slight twitch of amusement on her face. Someone is being bold today. She looked up at me, her face a little flushed as she reached up and pulled my head down into a kiss. It wasn't very deep, but it was much more than a slight peck on the lips. Okay, what's going on with you? I enjoyed the brief moment of intimacy, but she was definitely acting strange. I am perfectly fine. She turned away. Yeah, no. I poked her cheek. As much as I enjoy this closeness, you are acting strange. Spill. It's nothing, just when. Her face turned a much brighter red than before. When we engaged in battle and I fought that Hercules person, I felt some things. Well, I could only imagine what it was like to fight someone calling themselves Hercules after facing the real T. From you. She clarified. From me? I looked at her in confusion until realization dawned on me. I think there was some sort of sympathetic link when her dragon's core roared to life and the boosted gear that was inside my soul. Does that mean I basically blasted her with all my lust for those few moments? Well, time to go kill myself. She tugged on my sleeve to grab my attention. I was surprised, and perhaps a little unsure of how to process those feelings at the time, but I am happy you feel that way about me. She said quietly. Compared to someone like Yasaka, I was worried that you didn't. She trailed off but didn't finish. Oh, that's why she was feeling emboldened. Awkwardness aside, at least she is happy, I guess. On the flip side, if I felt things like that from someone I was attracted to, it would definitely give me a confidence boost. I ran my hand down her arm until her fingers intertwined with me. I had to leave later, but I would just enjoy these few moments for now. I flipped my hat, setting it neatly on my head, looking around the room. I suppose this is goodbye again. Don't forget to bring back souvenirs. Rin barely gave me a look. Love you too, Rin, and yes, I'll be very careful, thank you for your kind words. I ignored her and turned to Artoria. Take care of yourself, make sure Rin eats at least twice a day, also don't forget to change her dia. Fuck you, Schweinorg. Rin shout from the other side of the room. I smirked at her and her lips curled up as well. Try not to be too much of a man-whore. A Herculean task, but I shall try. Seems like her and Artoria had a chat. Well, I'm glad she isn't making any false assumptions on our relationship then. Be careful, you do not know what dangers are awaiting you. Artoria stepped forward towards me expectantly. Do you have everything you require? Foodstuffs, healing materials, alchemic ingredients, on my OG supplies. I wrapped my arms around her, pulling her in close. I have more than enough. Besides, this world isn't supposed to be very dangerous, all things considered. Do not be overconfident. She lightly chided, she stood up on her tiptoes and placed her lips against mine briefly. Yes, ma'am. I shot her a smile, which she reciprocated. Usually, I'm the one having to make sure he's prepared. Zelretch stepped in. It's good to have someone to keep his head on straight. He gave a gentle smile towards both me and Artoria. Her words ring true, I only know some vague outlines of this world line you're going to, having only glimpsed it in the past by mere chance. Yeah, I read the notes. There are humans there, so I should be able to wing it. Stood up straight as Artoria removed herself. My acting skills are quite good. Anything you want me to grab while I'm out and about? Oh, now that you mention it, I do have a small list with me. He waved his hand and a piece of paper flew right over to me, bundled up into many pages. I looked it over and gave him glare. You are the worst. I deadpanned. He just cackled. Do what you can. He waved me off. Other mundane things as well, I wouldn't mind some soil samples from various places, perhaps some foliage as well. If they have any interesting foods or varieties, I wouldn't mind expanding the garden. I forgot he had his own garden. If I remembered correctly, he traded favors with the blue to adjust the growth rate there, a mild adjustment to the temporal flow, basically a bounded field that accelerates time. Well, I have the coordinates already, but would you mind giving me a lift, old man? I asked. Sure. He smiled, waving his hand, allowing a new portal to open. This should get you relatively close to civilization, though how accurate it is I don't know. Good enough for me. I gave one last look around the room. Off I go. And I jumped in. The split second between the 2 points had me merely blinking as I started falling through the air, smacking into tree branches before I hit the ground. Ow! I whined, face planting into the dirt. 10 out of 10 nice face plant. Well, what do the other judges have to say? I rolled over to stare at a young woman looking at me a few feet away. Hello. She blinked at me. Are you okay? Probably. I stood up, brushing myself off. Did you see a hat anywhere? I saw it fall over, she disappeared in burst of rose petals. Here you go. She happily handed it back to me. Thanks. I brushed it off as well, putting it back on my head. Not the weirdest thing I've seen before. You're pretty fast. I took another look. She was wearing a red cape with a hood, and her hair had some red highlights. Were those natural or not? Curious. She seemed to beam at my praise. It's my semblance. She said excitedly. What about you, what was yours? I saw that bright light suddenly fill the sky. You were like, WOAH, and fell and then, smack, hit the ground. She started gesturing with her hands. Was that your semblance? Sure, why not? The fuck is a semblance? That must mean you're a huntsman. She practically squealed. What's a huntsman? I asked in confusion. Some kind of hunter. She tilted her head. Someone who fights grim, duh. She looked at me weirdly. How do you not know that? I'm from very far away. How far away? Like Mistral. But even Mistral has huntsmen, maybe Atlas, but they're everywhere and there's no way you wouldn't know about them then. I guess you must be from Vacuo, I heard it's all desert over there. Did you come from the desert? Is it really as hot as people say? I heard that there are a lot of Grimm that hide under the sands and make it hard to travel. Further away. I said without really thinking about it, getting a better look at the broken moon in the sky. She gasped. Are you an alien? Wait, what? Why would she even reach that conclusion? I mean, it isn't technically wrong, just kind of a weird train of thought to randomly reach. Sure, kid. Oh my gosh. She threw her hands up in excitement. I can't wait to tell Yang, and Dad. Uncle Qrow too. Rose petals began to fall around her as she practically vibrated in the spot she was standing. Well, some directions to town wouldn't be remiss. She seems fun, probably no older than 15, maybe a little bit younger than that. Awesome. I can show you Patch, and you can meet Dad, he's home right now. I just shrugged. Wasn't like I was going to get a better offer anytime soon. Would give me an opportunity to get some actual information from her about this world. Oh, by the way, I'm Ruby Rose, she turned around waving at me. Oh right, it's Ruby Rose, enunciating her name like I couldn't understand her. Ruby, we've been speaking the same language this whole time. I deadpanned. I'm Wilhelm Henry Schweinorg, it's a pleasure. I picked a leaf from a nearby tree, looking at it for a moment before tossing it away. Nothing too spectacular about it, not that I was expecting anything different. It was surprising how many worlds seemingly evolved in such similar ways. I'm pretty sure this tree had a corresponding twin back on Earth somewhere, at least enough on the surface to be unnoticeable of either world's habitants. Even the grass didn't look anything impressive, but I did grab a sample of dirt and added it to a little baggie for later. Oh. Ruby shot in front of me. Are you taking samples back to your mothership for later? She looked at me expectantly. Yup, my Gramps wanted samples from this world. In for a penny, in for a pound. Why, you don't need samples of people, right? She shrunk down slightly. I couldn't help but smile at her antics. I wondered if Kunu would be like her in a few years. I'm not here to kidnap anyone. I shook my head with a small laugh as something caught my eyes in the distance. What's that? I pointed over towards a clearing. Ruby's head snapped, eyes squinting. Beowulf. The words barely left her mouth as her form disappeared, leaving behind a small outline of rose petals. What an excitable girl. I muttered, looking where she burst off to. I saw the metal contraption on her back, which I was assuming to be a gun, transform into a very large scythe. Okay then. I just blinked as she swung around a weapon larger than herself. A couple more of these Beowulfs stumbled out of the woods, running at her. She slid under their attacks with ease, using the momentum of her own swings to weave into the bodies of the creatures, easily dismembering them. They fell to the ground, dissolving into nothingness. Curious. I tapped my chin, taking out the notes the old man gave me about this world. Grim, was it? I scratched my head, trying to make sense of what Zelretch wrote. Some kind of malevolent constructs that populate the world and are inclined to seek out and kill people, seemingly completely ignoring animals. Zelretch wasn't sure of their origin, nor of how they exist, so to speak. Something to look into. There were a few drawings to go along with what he wrote. Apparently, they all have these weird bone protrusions all over their body, also each have these bone masks on their faces, otherwise their bodies are almost completely black with weird red markings. All done. Ruby appeared next to me again. You're pretty good. I'm going to be a huntress. Ruby nodded happily. You have a lot of wasted movements though. I idly commented, writing a couple things in the margin of the notes I was given. What? She looked at me with a little surprise on her face. I could see through her combat style at a glance. You rely too much on being quicker than your opponents, your attacks had a lot of flair, but you had too many openings. If you were to go against an intelligent opponent, someone used to fighting people, you would probably lose as you are. I walked over to a nearby tree and found a good length branch, giving it a few swings. I nodded to myself. Come at me. I ushered her forward. Wait, you want to spar? With a stick? I just smiled, turning around, I filled the stick with my magical energy and swept it against the tree. Her eyes practically bugged out of her head as the large object began to fall out with a clean cut through its trunk. How did you do that? Was that your semblance? She practically shouted. Wait, do aliens have aura? Do they have souls? Wait, is it rude to assume that aliens don't have souls? Am I being accidentally racist? Yang said I need to be careful about that. You can assume it's my semblance. I just nodded, more amused than anything at her ramblings. I honestly wanted to pat her head, but I refrained. So, come, try to attack me. Alright, but tell me when your aura gets low, I don't want to hurt you. She pulled her weapon out and it shifted from a gun-like object into a full-on scythe again. Almost lackadaisical with her attention, as if she didn't see me as a threat and this was merely for fun. Well, Miss Huntress, are you going to attack or not? I lazily leveled my stick at her. That got her attention, as she moved quickly at me, petals showing her advanced speed activating. It didn't look like she was taking me seriously as she used a blunt part of her weapon to sweep at me. I stepped forward, raising my stick up and piercing right towards her shoulder. Her entirely attack got stopped, she was lifted off her feet and knocked back several yards. Curious, a red shimmering barrier appeared over her, stopping me from making contact. I actually put more force into it than I intended to test its actual strength. I flipped open the book again, turning to page I recalled. Ah, was this the aura I heard about? She did mention something about that as well. The power of the soul made manifest, or something like that. Seriously, Zelretch's notes are really fucking vague. Kinda feel like he did that on purpose to mess with me. Ow. Ruby stood up, rubbing her shoulder. I felt that through my aura. Maybe I should hold back a little bit. Again. Ruby shook herself off, standing back up. I'll get you this time. She took a stance, somewhat better than before, like she was taking this moderately serious. Granted, I didn't know much about wielding a scythe, but her legs were steady, and she had a solid center of gravity. She moved, her scythe sweeping towards my torso. She used her whole body to spin the large weapon at me. My stick made contact, acting like a wall as it blocked her blade. But she apparently anticipated this and her scythe shifted slightly, acting more like a glaive. Twisting it around, she used her momentum to continue her assault. I met each of her attacks with the slightest movement, while she danced around me with huge sweeping attacks. I merely flicked my stick to block. The petals around me started to pile up, and I noticed that she was only sprinting in straight lines. It made following her movements even easier, if I couldn't already see them easily from before. She had a good rhythm going, and against one of those grim creatures it would have been a sufficient strategy, alas. Yield. I stepped forward, disrupting her entire movement, placing my stick at the nape of her neck. She blinked, looking down. You're good. She whispered, only Uncle Qrow is able to beat me that easily. You're simply not used to fighting other people. I tossed my stick to the side. Yeah. She pouted, refolding her scythe back into its compacted form and putting it away on her back. But I want to be a huntress. To fight grim and be a hero, I don't need to fight people. She beamed. I really didn't want to kill that innocence she had, so I held my tongue. It seems you can only use your burst of speed in straight lines too. What? No. She looked away awkwardly. What gave it away? You only moved in straight lines with it. I laughed. Keep practicing, you'll be able to overcome that limitation in the future. I smiled. I keep practicing until I can beat you. She huffed. But that was so cool. She quickly changed her tone. How did you do that? Her attitude was really contagious. I trained with a good teacher. I smiled happily, thinking of Scat Hack again. The memories were becoming less and less bitter as time passed, but I still missed her something fierce. Ah, I can't wait until I can go to Beacon. Is Beacon a school? I hazarded a guess as we continue on through the forest. Oh, I forgot you aren't from around here, she said with the subtlety of a dragon. Beacon is the best huntsman school in Vale. My dad and Uncle Qrow went there, and my mom too. More to mentally file away. There's my home. She hand gestured towards the end of another clearing. It wasn't what I was expecting, but it looked rather homey. A large, log cabin with a few others in the distance. And a bit further away, I could vaguely see something resembling a town with some buildings that peeked over the treeline. So, as grateful as I am, is it a good idea to lead a stranger to your home like this? I'm supposed to help people. She smiled brightly. And Dad's home, and I'm a huntress in training. I just shrugged, different social norms based on how they developed here. Dad! Ruby shouted. I'm home and I have a guest. It better not be a boy. Another shout came from deeping in the house. Dad! Ruby shouted in indignation as the sound of footsteps could be heard approaching. A tall blonde man walked out of a nearby room. He stared at me for a moment. Where did I put my shovel? I have the strangest feeling I'll be needing to dig a grave. I couldn't help but have my lips curl up. He seems fun. Dad. Stop being mean, I'm not a child. She puffed up. I'm going to tell Uncle Qrow. Fine, fine, he held his hands up in surrender. Go get your uncle, he should be sleeping off a hangover, somewhere. Ugh, alright. She pouted. I wanted to show Qrow the alien anyways. She disappeared in a burst of petals. Ruby, he turned and shouted in the directions he ran off to. I said no semblance in the house, you're cleaning these up when you get back. He turned back towards me. An alien? He eyed me suspiciously. Is that some kind of pickup line the kids are using these days? Your daughter has an active imagination, so I just played along. I shrugged. That girl. He sighed in exasperation. So, who are you and why shouldn't I be actively looking for my shovel? Oh gods, will this be how I react when my daughter starts dating? I couldn't help but thinking about that and shuddered. Sorry to ruin your fun, I don't have those kind of intentions, besides, she's a bit young for me, I prefer older women. The man let out a laugh. Taiyang Xiaolong. He held out his hand which I shook. Everyone calls me Tai. Wilhelm Henry Schweinorg. I returned the greeting. Your daughter was kind enough to lead me here after I got a bit lost after a semblance mishap. Semblance mishap? He eyed me. I just shrugged, choosing to be vague. She is quite excitable. She gets that from her mom. Tai smiled. So what's this about being an alien? He raised an eyebrow, clearly wanting to know the joke. Lots of colors in the sky, fell down and landed in front of your daughter, ergo alien. I summarized. Tai snorted. She gets into the weirdest situations. He laughed. Well, at least she can handle herself. I pointed out taking a seat as he gestured to a chair. Took care of a handful of Beowulfs with relative ease. A handful? He rubbed his chin. How far away were you? Less than an hour out. Ruby would know better than me. I scratched my head. I'll need to talk to some people. He sighed. We usually keep the grim really thinned on the island, a group of Beowulfs isn't really a huge red flag, but regardless, especially this close to town. He shook his head. So what are you here for? Not many people visit Patch just to visit. Basically it's where us old hunters retire to raise our kids. Well, I was intending to go to Vale, but well. I lied through my teeth, using terms I just learned minutes ago. Semblance mishap. He nodded. How does that work? I thought for a moment, taking my hat off and reached inside, taking out an apple, tossing it to him. Could more or less guess what a semblance was at this point, was just going to pass my use of space as my semblance for now. No idea if this would work, but it was worth a try. He seemed surprised, staring at the piece of fruit and down back at my hat. Oh, cool. So Qrow picks up a banana, and I know what you're thinking, he's going to do something hilarious with it, right? I nodded along, a small smile on my face as Tai recounts a story with him and his best friend. Maybe throw it at one of the gangsters, maybe toss the banana peel and some weird comedic timing makes one of them slips on it. He raised his eyebrow. Nope. He barely held in a laugh. He stops fighting, right in the middle of the brawl, and starts peeling that banana. I look at him in complete shock, wondering what the hell he's doing. The guys we're fighting stop and stare at him too, wondering what the hell was wrong with this guy. Tai shook his head. Qrow just stares the one thug he was fighting with a moment ago, right in the eyes, and shoves the banana all the way down his throat and swallows it. I barely held in my drink as I held my nose so nothing would shoot out, keeping my laughter stifled. Damn it, Tai, I thought you said you weren't going to tell that story anymore. A man nursing a bag of ice walked into the room followed by Ruby. He was a different than Tai, a tall and well-built blonde. This dude was a bit slimmer, black hair and red eyes. Story? What story? Ruby popped up. Nothing you need to know, shorty. Qrow pulled her cape over her head. I'm not short. She whined, grabbing his hand and trying to push it away. Qrow seemed to ignore her as he took a flask out of his pocket, taking a swig then eyeing me. So this is the alien. Yo. I greeted. Sup. He nodded at me, turning back to Ruby. He looks pretty human to me. Qrow. Don't be racist. Ruby hurriedly chastised him. Actually, I'm not an alien. I felt like the joke had gone on long enough, I didn't want to use her naivety cruelty. I'm a magician, I waved my hands enthusiastically. Okay, I couldn't resist. Really? Gonna to pull a rabbit out of your hat? Qrow snorted. Maybe I will. Was that a thing here too? I'd stop drinking for a month if you could do that. My lips curled up and I flipped my hat upside down. I stared right into his eyes as my arm went into my hat, much further than it should have, pulling out Sir Wiggles in all his glory. Silence filled the room. He's so cute. Ruby gushed as I let the rabbit out of my hands and into hers. Huh. Tai just looked surprised as he reached over and stole Qrow's flask. Sober for a month, that's gotta suck. Bite me. Qrow groaned. Who are you exactly? He looked at me. Just a lost person, your niece? Found and brought to town. I replied. Was actually on my way to Vale and had a little semblance mishap. What's your semblance, some kind of space manipulation? Qrow raised an eyebrow. Something like that. I smiled. I knew a chick who could do something like that, but create portals. Qrow sat down next to Tai. Sound familiar? I was surprised by his question and noticed Tai tense up slightly. Sorry, no idea. I shrugged, some kind of story there I guess. Long shot anyways. He didn't dwell on it. So what brings you to Vale? If you got so long, you're probably not a native. Yeah, bit of an outsider, just want to visit the big city for some personal projects. Wanted to start a research project on the nature of dust and aura. Was there even a need to hide my intents? Sounds boring. Qrow clearly looked disinterested. Well, if I remember right, there should be a bullhead heading over to Vale in the next couple hours. Tai seemed unsure, but I guess the time frame was something to look into. I guess I should head over then, don't want to miss my chance. I stood up. Thank you for your hospitality, I know it was a surprise to have a stranger suddenly drop in like this. Tai let out a small laugh. Don't worry about it, you are hardly the weirdest thing Ruby brought home. He looked at his daughter warmly. Besides, I'm proud of her for helping someone like this, she's going to be a great huntress. I couldn't help but admire the little girl too. She was willing to bring me to her home because she thought I was in need of aid. You have a good daughter, I can only hope mine grows up to be like her. Geez, look at me thinking of Kunu's future. How old is yours? 11. Qrow spit out the drink he was sneaking. Damn, they start earlier and earlier now. I rolled my eyes. Not by blood, obviously. Adopted? Tai asked. Well, she adopted me. I let out a small laugh. Regardless, I want to offer a gift as thanks. I only did my duty as a huntress. Ruby chimed in with a bit of pride in her voice, clearly paying attention to our conversation. I'm supposed to help people. Hey now, short stuff, let's see what he's offering, weren't you eyeing that new upgrade for your weapon? Qrow chimed in. Qrow, stop being a bad influence. Tai sighed, only to see the sparkles in Ruby's eyes and realize it was futile. I couldn't help but laugh. Your weapon has a lot of moving parts, small ones at that, I can only imagine the maintenance costs and time that go into it. Ugh, I know. Ruby huffed, rubbing her face into Sir Wiggles. But it's fun too, you know. Tinkering with my baby, getting her perfect and upgrading her. Wait, you repair it? I looked surprised. Did you make it too? Yup. Her name is Crescent Rose, she's my baby. Ruby beamed with pride. Wow, I can say without a shadow of a doubt, I could not do that. My specialty is not in mechanical engineering, especially with firearms. I thought for a moment, taking out a couple ingots of orichalcum from my ring. These should be useful to you then, think of it as a thank you. Whoa. What are these? I've never seen metal like this before. Ruby eyes them curiously. It's called orichalcum, a very rare metal, it may take some trial and error to smelt them, but they're much more durable than steel, I dare say they won't suffer any damage in combat even if you use your weapon every day for your entire life. Ruby squealed, opting to hug the metal over Sir Wiggles, the latter of whom seemed upset by this betrayal. Well, she's going to disappear into her workshop for a few days now. Tai shook his head as I scooped up Sir Wiggles and put him back inside my little hat where he was resting. Thank you, she really does love tinkering with her weapon. Good deeds deserve a reward. I held out my hand. It was a pleasure meeting you, but I should be on my way. If you're ever in the neighborhood, I'll look you up. I gave him one last goodbye and a nod towards Qrow, who was paying more attention to Ruby than me. What a nice family. I wonder if this is the standard or the exception to the people in this world. Well, time to hit the road. I looked out the window of this supposed bullhead. It was basically a plane. Well, as much as the term could fit this vehicle. It had these large propeller wings that allowed for vertical and horizontal takeoff. It was a neat design. I saw out the window as a massive ocean creature pierced through the water below, only to dive back down when it looked up and saw we were too high. That was a grim. A very large grim, and it looked like a type of sea serpent. How interesting, and barely anyone even batted an eye. Just more stuff to look into later. What should I do first? Probably find a library or bookstore of some sorts. Don't want to go around asking questions that are supposed to be common sense around here. Kind of want to try the local food as well, but I also don't have any of their currency, lean they called it. I may or may not have illegally boarded the bullhead using magic. Definitely want to find somewhere to buy some of this dust. I've seen it used in almost every commercial aspect of their technological base, and it's just making me all the more interested in how it works. I noticed the lights being powered by that strange material back at Tai's house and some other appliances. Really, it seems like they have all kinds of goodies here that I can acquire. Not to mention his aura everyone has. I don't actually know the exact mechanism on how one goes about acquiring it. But the vague notes Zelretch left indicate it could be a small force multiplier on top of everything I have right now. More power. Sure. On that note, I really need to have a talk with the old man about taking better records. Then again, I know his train of thought at the time was probably that he would be the only one reading it, so they were basically reminders. Perhaps I should look for gifts for my girls as well. Rin did say souvenirs. I really should get something for Kunu. Ha. I missed that little fox already. Good news is that I can pop on over and scoop her up whenever I want. Bad news is I would have to explain what I'm actually doing if the time difference is too wonky. My idle musings stopped as I saw the outline of a large city come into view. It was frankly massive, and the huge walls that surrounded it just emphasized that even more. I could see huge guns and fortifications all over the walls, pointing out towards the forest and whatnot. Damn, how much of a problem are these grim that they literally require fortifications of this degree? Honestly, I was a bit giddy to finally arrive. One doesn't explore a completely new world so often, and a hub of activity like this was even more exciting. I ended up falling in love with Skyrim. I wondered if anything like that would pull me here. Welcome to Vale. Please respect your fellow passengers in your boarding and unboarding procedures. An automated voice came over the intercoms. The vehicle touched down a lot smoother than planes I've flown on in the past. I made the idle note to find a design for these bullheads and bring it back with me at some point. Well, that was my K. With a quick spell, I disillusioned myself to quickly disappear without any fanfare. I had a new city to explore. If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.